All right, so I think we are. Let me just check and see if this pops up here. There we go. All right, so testing out new gear, new equipment for the live stream. So let me know how the voice sounds, and then we'll do a little test here. I think we are. Of the, ooh, let me just turn that off. How the voice sounds, and let me do a little test here for the music. All right, so if you are on the chat, let me know how the sound is, voice-wise and music-wise. Take a look. Hey everybody, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Good to see some familiar faces out there. Thank you for stopping by. And this is going to be something we do fairly regularly going forward now. Want to do a little bit more of the live streaming of just kind of my regular workflow rather than trying to split up. This is how I do my stuff, and and then separately do a YouTube video that's something totally different from what I normally do. So this is what we'll be doing today. So today, I'm going to be working on a couple different things. I have a new module right up here. You can see the one with the big pink knob on it. That is the Coral module that was sent over to me by the nice folks at Oxi Instruments in Barcelona. And I'm going to be figuring out how this thing works. I've already been messing with it quite a bit, but I also want to figure out how I'm going to be able to use it in my live setup, because I have a couple of shows coming up, and want to be able to use it there. And it's so powerful and so deep that that I wanted to see if it was possible to do, or what it was possible to do with it, because it does so much. So just to go over a little bit about what it is, so you'll see a little bit about what's going on. It is an 8-voice multi-timbral synth, meaning that it can play 8 different synths at the same time from that module. It's also 8-note, or up to 8-note polyphonic, and you can mix and match those things. So if you want to have 8 different monosynths from that one voice, you can have that, or you can have 2 monosynths and a 6-voice polyphonic synth, or whatever you want. So it's a really clever module, and it's got some built-in effects. It has a built-in filter. It has an envelope, has a noise generator, and it's pretty easy to switch around to different things. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So we're just gonna start messing around with that today. So what I was working on just a little bit ago was, I've got a pattern here. Get you some overview. There we go. So on the Oxi one down here, I have a couple patterns. So this is a multi-track sequencer. So each row is a different sequencer, basically. So they're just like a row sequencer on, say, the Octatrack or one of the others. So each one of these is set to send to a different voice in the Oxi. So if I mute everything except this track that's all pink here, and I'll play that without the kick here, you'll be able to hear. So yeah, so you can hear this voice. So it's got a filter, has an envelope, and then some different things you can do with the sound. You can change the octave really easily as well. So if you wanted it to be a bass sound. or back up to a lead or something higher. So that's just one of the voices, you know, something pretty cool to mess around with in there. So what's cool is that's just one of the voices. So if I was to bring in, so I've got a couple other things that I was sequencing before. So if I bring in another voice, and if I want to change that voice, I can just go to that voice. Now everything that's here is changing that voice, and the other one will stay the same. Hear the noise generator. It's a little subtle. It also has a built-in reverb, which is pretty cool. My channel. And again, if you want to change up the other sound that we were listening to, just change to that voice. And now everything is. So you have a lot of control over it, which is pretty cool. And being able to have that much in a small modular case is great because this is my case that I'm going to be using for travel. It fits into one side of my rolling suitcase for my carry-on. So I want to try to pack as much into a small space as I can. I don't have really any drum modules in here. Some of them are able to do percussions, but all my drums are coming from my Octatrack. And so I have a performance mixer in here that the voices are going through. I have 4 voices. I have 2 Platts clones. I have the Oxi Coral and I have a BIA. And then effects-wise, I have a Ghost effect here. There's the Endorphins Ghost, then I have 2 of the Happy Nerding FX aids, one set as a delay, one set as a reverb, and those are both on sends. So that way I can kind of send any of the voices to any of the parts that I want. And then I've got some modulation being generated here, attenuated here. I've also got the Pam's New Workout and Pam's Pro Workout. Each of them are sending some different kinds of modulations to different things in the modules here. So that's my way of getting a bunch into a small case. I also have coming through a channel in the mixer here, I have the 1010 Blackbox, which is doing all of my kind of long length samples. So if I have a background ambiance or a vocal or something that goes longer, I'm not sequencing anything with this, although it can sequence. And I just like it because you can kind of launch a long thing and just let it run, and it time stretches to tempo, which is great. And so yeah, so I have this clocked, and it's also running it through, as I said, the performance mixer here. Then the performance mixer comes out and goes into the Octatrack. The Digitac goes into the Octatrack. Everything kind of gets mixed here. This is the performance mixer is what I'm using this for right now. And then has all these different performance effects so that I can use that to kind of build tracks on the fly. And the Oxi One sequencer is sequencing the modular. There's a MIDI out from that sequencer that's going to the MIDI in of the Coral, so that way I can send on a different MIDI channel for each one of these different tracks in the multi-track sequencer. And then in the other ones that are mono sequencers, there's a connection via HDMI to this little module up here, which is the Oxi pipe. and that allows me to patch out 8 CV and 8 gate from that into the case without having to have the cables all come from the Oxi One into the case. It's just one cable, and then I can patch internally from there, which makes it really easy to set up. Again, this is designed to be a travel rig, so I wanted to have the least amount of things to patch once I get into place. So all this stays patched except for the 2 cables that come out that go to the Octatrack, this HDMI cable, and then I have a couple clock lines that are coming in for the Pam's new workout, and I think that's it, because that's clocking everything else. So yeah, so that's kind of how this is all set up, and how the Oxi's controlling that. Yeah, so just let me check really quick with the chat before I go on. Let's see here. Hey there. Cool, great to see you guys there. Oh, Sign Pilot, glad you made this one. I guess the last time you were in with about a minute left to go. So good to see you there. And yeah, Travarsi, thanks for joining up. Travarsi's also going to be in Berlin, and then we're also going to be doing the same show in Denver on the 20th of May with Lady Starlight, which is going to be a ton of fun. Very much looking forward to that. But yeah, so let's keep going. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to pop them into the chat, and I will keep checking in on that as we go. And I will, let's see here. I think I can do the, ooh, there we go. Picture in picture. Super fancy. I'm just getting to know this software for streaming, these cameras for streaming. So forgive me if it seems a little odd. I've got 3 different views here: overhead, the face view, and then kind of an overview of the studio. So this is the space where I am, so you can see some of the cameras in there as well. But yeah, so we'll go back to the overhead mode. And yeah, hey, greetings from Mexico. Nice, good to see. Yesterday we had somebody from, where were they from? Thailand? I can't remember. But great to see you. Pop in and let me know where you're in from, which is great. So yeah, so anyway, with these, with the different modules, the way that these are set up, again, each has a channel in here. This acts very much like a DJ mixer, so I can send to different effects and things like that. So again, if we're, so this is all coming from the Oxi One, and again, it's just 2 channels. It's just these 2 middle ones. If I bring up another one, kind of in the background there. And then again, all my drums are set up on the Digitac, so I get something going here, something kind of random and fun going there, and then bring in some of the drums. And again, as I add in things into here, just let me know in the chat how the sound is, because it's the first time that I've gone with this setup with going directly in like this. So just want to make sure it's not distorting or clipping at all, which I think it might be just a touch. There we go. That might be a little better there. All right. All right. Sorry, there wasn't much talking there. Just got kind of sucked into jamming around a little bit. So as you can see, this Coral thing is like super fun to jam on. So like all that was just like made up in the moment. I was just like messing around with stuff. And what's cool about this is that you can switch back and forth pretty easily between the voices. And so just in that one module, you got 8 voices worth of stuff to mess with and stuff to play with. And you know, I love the way that is. So it's, yeah, tons of fun. Sorry, I'm gonna check in on the chat here. Let's see here. Oh, EasyBot. Hey, what's going on, man? I watch your stream, you watch my stream. It's kind of fun. Right. If I was a kid, I would want an Octatrack for Christmas. Yes, everybody should have an Octatrack for Christmas. You know, it's funny, we were talking about this the other day. Somebody was asking me a question online about the Octatrack and like, oh, I had one and I sold it, now I'm gonna get another mixer and whatever. And I was like, well, in order to do what this is doing just right here, just as a performance mixer and looper and effects, you'd have to get a DJ mixer and a looper, or that rare DJ mixer that has the looper in it. There's a couple of them, but yeah, I mean, and then you're already at like double the price of what this is, and that's only this tiny little fraction of what this can do. So if tomorrow I took this whole setup apart and I just wanted to use this as a sampler, or if I just wanted to play this with one other piece of gear or whatever, it's like a Swiss Army knife. It does whatever, and it just happens to be the mixer in my setup. But if you're, you know, it can kind of do whatever. It's one of those things where if you're like, oh, I need a sampler, okay, it does that. Or, oh, I need a drum machine, okay, it does that. Or, oh, I need to MIDI sequence some other gear, it does that too. Or, oh, I need a performance mixer. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Octatrack is pretty awesome. I think it's kind of the only thing I absolutely need within this to be able to do a live setup. Like I could switch out all the other gear, but it would be really hard for me to do a show and have it sound, I don't know, the way I want it to, without being able to kind of do the build-ups and breaks and loops for transitions and stuff like that. So this is kind of like the most important thing, actually. So let's see what else we got going here. Hard to dance and type. Yes, I know, it's hard to dance and make music too, or sorry, it's hard to type and make music as well. So that's why I don't catch up on the chat all the time. So where's the Percons? The Percons is, you can't see it from here, but it is right over there on the shelf. The reason I have this set up the way that this is set up is because I'm getting ready for a few traveling shows, and the Percons is just too big to take with me traveling for what it does. I know I was talking with Travarsi the other day, who is on here, and I know she has a Percons as well, and she was talking about sampling it into the Digitac so you could get some of the sounds. Very much what I do with the analog rhythm is I'll make my drum sounds in there and sample them into the Digitac, because it's a much smaller form factor and a lot easier to kind of chuck in a backpack onto a plane. So yeah, the Percons is over there, and I absolutely love it. It is one of my all-time favorite pieces of machinery. I think it is a close second to the analog rhythm as my favorite drum machine ever. So yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's just not in my current live setup because yeah, it's just too darn big. But I wouldn't make it any smaller because it is amazingly comfortable to use with the big knobs and some space, and being able to see all 4 lanes of sequencing on it. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. But it's yeah. Let's see here. Thanks for the jam. You're welcome. I'm glad. It's super fun for me. That's why I'm doing this, because this is what I'd be here doing anyway. And I was actually talking with Matthew, EasyBot, who's on the chat here. We were talking about this the other day when we were in LA for NAMM, and I was saying that I wanted to start doing these live streams because I'm here doing this anyway, and I find it really hard to find time with a day job and family and all that stuff, find time to be able to do this, which I love to do, and also make YouTube videos on the side. So I was like, you know what, I'm here anyway, so I'm just gonna set up cameras so that I can do this, and I'll just talk through what I'm doing, and you know, you guys can get bored by my screwing around on my gear and trying to figure out how to learn stuff. So Anyway, yeah, let's see here. Yes, God bless the Octatrack and EasyBot's performance template. Well, I will give him a shout out, not because he's on the chat here, but that's what this is set up as right now. This is his template, and I've told him this a bunch of times, but I could not play my live shows the way I do if not for his template. I could have spent the next 10 years of my life trying to figure out how to make this like this, or, you know, thankfully there's people like him who are far smarter than I am that can come up with ways to do this and share them out with the world. So if you have an Octatrack and you haven't gotten this template, you absolutely should. It's a game changer for live performance, for sure. Let's see, what do you use the Blackbox for? So Blackbox is just for long samples. So if I take this out, let's just do just a kick here. So basically I have this set up with banks of 16 long form samples. And so if I need something like, for example, if I need an atmosphere in the background, which I do often, I will bring up something like this. And that'll just kind of hang out in the background. And now I could do that with, you know, with the module or with, you know, something else. But it's just so much easier on here because I can just loop a longer sample, and then you can just launch it just kind of like you would launch clips in Ableton. So you can just one touch and you launch that and it'll just keep looping. And then you've got great control over level, pitch, you've got filter with resonance, you've got an ADSR envelope, you've got a couple of effects per channel. So you have a lot of control over this. So if you wanted to make this a higher pitch for whatever you're doing, so you can change the sound of it that way. Or if you wanted to filter it up, or filter it way down. So just a lot of control over some those kind of background type things. The other thing I use it for is vocals. So I have a few vocals in here. So like, let's see, this one. Rhythms. So it's cool because you can just get this to loop in the background, which, you know, if you bring in some other stuff. So you can hear how it really adds to stuff in the background. And then I've got a couple of other vocals on this thing too. And then I have a few kind of random patterns. I liked this percussion pattern that I found just as kind of a groovy kind of, you know, more organic sounding percussion. So I put it in here as a sample. So basically, I just use this for, you know, anytime I find a cool sample that I want to use in something that I'm doing, I can chuck it in there. But for the vast majority of the time, it's for kind of background atmosphere things and vocals. Because everything else I like to do here, I like to sequence percussion here. I like to actually sequence percussion here as well, which is tons of fun, especially with the Oxi. So yeah, but anyway, that's what the Blackbox is for. So let's see, yes, shout out to EasyBot. Travarsi's using it too. Yeah, we all are. Anybody who's anybody is using the EasyBot performance template, I think we can safely say. Even those of us who aren't anybody yet are still using it. It's very awesome. Let's see here. Use the Blackbox for vocals that are very long. Yes, it does handle long samples better than pretty much anything. Yeah, the Deluge is great as well. But again, I'm looking for smallest form factor, and I absolutely love the 1010 music stuff because of that. It does so much in a tiny little amount of space that it's great for a traveling setup. So yeah, that's exactly what I'm using it for as well. Let's see. Switch out your stereo sampler. Yes, you could. Awesome. Well, if you have any other questions or anything you want to chuck in the chat, happy to answer them. If there's anything you'd like to see on here, happy to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to keep messing around with stuff because I'm trying to, whenever I sit down to practice like this, it's not, because I don't pre-prepare my sets, all of this time is kind of like sitting down and practicing scales on the piano for me. So it's like taking time to learn the gear and messing around with stuff and figuring out what it does. Like for example, this Ghost module, it does a bunch of really cool stuff. And if you haven't taken the time to really get to know it, it makes it a lot more difficult. So like, for example, if I just have something simple, let's see here. So this is just something really simple on the BIA here. I can bring it up. So super simple, just a tone. But if I run that through the Ghost with its kind of chain of, delay, reverb, distortion, filter, like all this cool stuff, however you have it set up, you get this. And then you could add in, and this is just changing the filter on that output of the effects. And I have this as a send, and then it's coming back into its own return, so I can kind of take that out if I want to, or bring it back in. So it really just helps fill things out. One of the things that I find is that with live setups, particularly with Modular, they can sound pretty thin unless you have a ton of modules and you're layering a bunch of different stuff. And what I love about the Ghost is that it's kind of like, as well as those atmospheres that I was mentioning on the Blackbox, they're kind of like a cheat for that to allow you to have kind of more, a more complete spectrum of sound than you would have just using like just this sound, right? So it gives you a ton more. And then you're adding in some other stuff like the Oxi. If I take out the BIA and just do the Oxi, so this is basically just this one module with 4 different voices sequenced. Yeah. 4 different voices sequenced, all with different synth engines, different effects, different filter, different envelopes, and then those are all going through that Ghost. If I take the Ghost out, still pretty cool because it does have some internal effects. It does have a reverb and a chorus built into it, so you can still get some really cool sounds from it, but adding in that Ghost just really fills everything up. Gives you this cool kind of background atmosphere, and then all you gotta do is bring in some drums and you're golden. So you see what I mean? So if you pick and choose things correctly, you can come up with a whole ton of stuff from a very small amount of modules. And that was the idea of building out this this case that was small enough to fit into a rolling carry-on. And the same thing behind using the Digitac for drums instead of the analog rhythm, which I would rather use, but it's bigger and it would just be that much more difficult to carry around. So yeah, it's that's the thought behind all of this stuff that's on here. I just saw some stuff in the chat. Let's see here. You said before the Octatrack is a mixer drum machine sampler in one box. Form factor's a thing. Wouldn't Digitac, Blackbox, and Bluebox do the same thing but on less space? Not really. One of the things that I try to do with my setup is I try to have each thing do a thing rather than trying to do multiple things. You know, basically you could do a whole live set with just the Octatrack. I mean, I think that we had voltage controller on here and he does that. I mean, he's like a genius just on the Octatrack, and you can do it, but the only way to do it with a single device or with a couple devices is you're constantly going through layers of stuff. So if you wanted to change up, you know, let's say you wanted to launch a whole bunch of things at once, or you wanted to affect different things at once, it's much more difficult to do that in different, you know, if in one machine that's doing multiple things. One of the reasons why after trying the MPC Live, I ended up getting rid of it right away, because I was curious about how it would work, and it was, you know, it can do a ton of stuff, but the problem is that it can't do a ton of stuff all on the face of it at once. So like, for example, with all these effects that I have in the Octatrack because of this template, I don't ever need to go into a menu ever for anything when I'm performing. All I need to do is hit B, assign it to something, and then crossfade to it. Hit B, assign it to something, and crossfade to it. So everything's right here. With the Digitact, I have all of my drums set up on the 8 tracks, and so 8 tracks are, they're always, the drums are always in the same place, even if the drums are different. So 1's always a kick, 2 is always a clap or snare, 3 and 4 always percussion, 5 usually 2, 6 is closed hat, 7 is open hat, 8 is ride. So I've got a bunch of different patterns that are all drum kits but they all follow that same convention. So if I want to change something up on there, I can just change it up on the face of it. And then I can go into an individual thing and adjust the sound if I would like to, but I don't have to go through pages of stuff to get to other stuff. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why, yes, you probably could do something similar with a smaller setup, but you'd find yourself spending your time in your live performance digging through menus rather than spending your time in your live performance making music. So I don't know if that makes sense. Let's see here. Crossfader's pretty cool. Octa workflow is worse though. I'm not sure. Well, so the Octatrack, you know, and Matthew, chime in on this because you're the Octatrack genius. But the thing about the Octatrack is that it's super, 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 super deep. It does a ton of things. So if you're trying to get it to do a whole bunch of different things at the same time, yes, it's complicated, the workflow is hard, but most of that is the workflow of setting it up. Once you set it up the way you want to use it, then you're kind of set. You know, you've got it, you know, it's already, you know, set up the way you want. It's kind of like patching a modular is really complicated, so you would never start a show with an empty thing and start patching, right? But once you have it patched, it's not nearly as complicated as it looks. You're dealing with some, you know, controls that you've kind of built into it, but you're not kind of building it from scratch. And with the Octatrack, I think a lot of people think about it, they feel like they have to do everything that it can do all at the same time, rather than picking what you want to do with it and then just doing that thing. And then the next time you use it, or in a different way, you can pick something else and use it that way, rather than trying to make it do everything at the same time. Let's see here. Let's see. Yes, so you can work around things with controllers, but then before you know it, you've got a controller for this, a controller for that, a controller for this, a controller for that, and then you've got way more stuff. And you've probably spent more than you would have spent on the Octatrack in the first place, because you'd need the mixer, which if you got the blue box, that would probably be one of those like $600. Then if you got an effects processor, well, that has effects in it, but they're deep, so you'd need a controller. So you'd have a separate MIDI controller for another couple $100. And you know, you start adding things on, and then it can do just what this is doing now, and you've probably spent about the same amount of money. But then you don't have the ability to sequence, to do sample editing, to do all of that stuff. Oh, well, then you might get a Blackbox to use with it instead, and then you're already over the price of this, and you can't do the same stuff. So it's really, it's, you know, personal preference thing, but I couldn't do it without this. And everybody's workflow is different, and everybody has machines that they prefer. But for me, something has to be pretty special to kind of take a place, because I've got such a limited thing, which is why, you know, the newest additions to what I'm doing here are the Oxi One and the Oxi Coral, and it's just because they earned a spot in here. The Coral is such an amazing sounding unit, and the Oxi One, you know, I'm a huge fan of the electron sequencers, but the Oxi One does a bunch of things that they don't do, and so that's why they work well together. They're kind of complementary units. So, hey, speaking of the Oxi, hey, Oxi Instruments, is that Manuel that's on here? Good to see ya. Let's see. Not really into sample workflow in general. Yeah, neither am I. That's why, as you can see, I'm into the synth workflow. I've got some samples, but interestingly enough, the samples that are in the Digitact were all made on the analog rhythm and resampled and put into here so that I could use them here. And I like the ability to be able to modify them here. But yeah, I'm not a sample chopper, which the Octatrack can do as well, but just not my thing. But you know, for those of you who are, it's a pretty cool thing. But yeah, so anyway, getting back into what we were looking at here. So let's take a look again at so again, this is multiple voices in here. I'm just gonna cut this back down to just this one, just the one that's highlighted pink there. I don't know if you can see the pink highlight in the screen, but this third one up from the bottom, this one right here. Now, I can take this one and I can hit delete and just delete out that one if I want to. Right, so I've got that cleared out. So then I can just bring in new sounds. And it's pretty easy to just, as you can with the electron sequencers, push down on one of the triggers and change the note. So again, you can see it's pretty easy to just dial in something simple, and then you can go to the module itself to start changing up the sound, you know, bring it to that, let's see here, to this one. So once you put it on that sound that I have this sending to, then you have control over it. So again, now that's just one of the voices. So if I want to bring in a different voice, I can bring in. So again, you can see just dial in a couple voices pretty quickly, and then you can bring in some drums. So as you can hear, tons going on here, and every one of those synth voices is coming from the Oxi Coral, which that's why for me, this thing is like crazy powerful. I mean, it's like having 8 synths in one module, plus a reverb, plus a chorus, plus envelopes, plus. So yeah, very cool. You do have to kind of dive into the menus, there's not really menus because there's not a screen, but dive into the functionality per voice. But that's the price you pay for having so much stuff crammed into one module. So for the amount of space that takes up in my case, it does an incredible amount of the lifting. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm a huge fan. So I noticed the Oxi guys are on here. Thank you guys. I am a massive fan of this. They were nice enough to send this over to me for me to try out, and it is, yeah, it's not going anywhere. It's staying right there in the middle of my case. So, you know, this case is kind of the idea is to have it be something that's really flexible and with the ability to change up a lot. Because as I mentioned, since I'm not pre-preparing stuff, I don't already have like transitions prepared and parts of songs and things like that. It's all kind of done on the fly. So what I tend to do a lot is transition individual instruments so that I can go from one section to another. So like, for example, if I was just playing what we were just listening to, and I wanted to bring in something else, you know, I could bring out some of my drums. And like I said, all my drum kits are set up in every pattern in the same way. So if I switch to a different pattern with a kick and an open hat here playing, on the next pattern, it will still be a kick and an open hat. Listen. So it's a different kick and it's a different open hat, but it's still a kick and an open hat. So being able to transition, so if I go back to where I was before, I get asked a lot how I transition between stuff. So for example, if you were to take, you know, let's say this riser effect and take out the kick and then transition patterns while you're doing the riser, you hear the hat switch, but it's still in time, and then you bring in the kick so when you drop this back down, and then you go. And now it's a new kick and a new hat. And so that's transitioned that part already to the next section of what I'm working on. So then if I wanted to bring in, let's say, a bass line on the BIA, which I had already going a little bit before. And I can start to bring the Oxi down. Still a little bit in the background, kind of like you would if you were DJing and you were mixing between tracks. And then let's say I want to bring in something else. So what else did I have a pattern on here? All right, so in this module right here, I don't have any pattern at all. So let's just try something out here. Just put in just something simple and then bring it in. Now we've transitioned from the Oxi, which was this, to the knit, which is this. And now we're in a totally different song because we've transitioned the drums over, we transitioned the bass line over, and we transitioned the melody over. But we didn't have to do it using parts and different things and having one machine control the other and switch between things, because a lot of people do that to keep things simple, and for me it actually makes it way more complicated. I would much rather do it like this, where I'm transitioning across individual parts, right? And let's say, so these are the two parts that I have going right now. If you listen to the Beehive, which has this part on it here, which I was messing with before. But let's say I don't want to use that melody again. What's cool about these units, they're like clones of the Plat. So you could switch this over from being a melodic instrument to being a percussive instrument. Let's see, go down here. And then I could bring that same pattern or I can try a different one out. Right, so this can be a totally different thing using that same pattern. Or if I want to generate a new pattern, another cool thing about the Oxi is that you can just generate random patterns. You set up the parameters of how random you want it to be, and then you just generate. Maybe we want it a little less dense. Right? And try it with a different voice. So again, easy to dial in something new, generate a random pattern, and then dial in the sound you want, and then again, bring in drums, and there you are. And then if we want to start transitioning to something else, let's do something different with the Oxi here. And bring that in. Sorry, just got jamming again. But anyway, the whole point of all the jams and all of that stuff is to show you that if you set up everything right in the first place, or if you set it up in a way that makes sense to you, you can mix and match things and create stuff on the fly. So basically, none of this is prepared in advance. You probably noticed I'm making sequences, I'm bringing things in, changing up voices, adjusting the sounds of stuff, you know, like the percussion part, for example, that I was playing before. Let's see. Actually, so this percussion part, it was all one note, and I wanted to have the notes kind of go around randomly, so I put an LFO with a random waveform on the sample tune, and then you can add. See, it kind of bounces all over the place that way. So anyway, those ideas come to mind as you're playing something, and if you've got your setup in a certain way where it's got the flexibility to improvise like that, you can go through and make up that stuff on the fly, and you don't, it helps you tailor every single set, every single performance to the people that are there and the vibe of the room. You know, if the room is empty and you're starting out, you don't want to start out just like slamming it out. And if the room is rammed full of people and they're having a great time, you don't want to come on and be all, you know, ambient just because that was the set you had prepared. So the idea of my setup is that it's a non-prepared setup. It's just something that's set up with a lot of flexibility to be able to mix and match and do things on the fly and kind of tailor that to the people that are there in the room. I mentioned this the other day, but I heard from somebody once, and it really stuck with me, that when you're performing live, it's like a conversation between human and machine, and you want the machines to input something into the conversation. So those random things that are generated, those random patterns, those random notes, those random, you know, LFOs or random tones that are shifting around, that's the machine talking, and then you want to talk as well. So I'm going to enter in some sequences. I'm going to change settings and parameters. So I'm inputting something and the machine's inputting something, and our conversation back and forth live in front of the people is the show. And that's why every single show is completely different. Nothing is prepared, and so it's not like I did my set at this one show and now I'm going to do the same set at the other show. I can't do it like that. There's a lot of people that can. For me, that it's not something for me, that's way too complicated. I would much rather have the flexibility to be able to make the sounds that I hear in my head and that go along with the vibe of what's in the room and the people that are there, so that I can give them the best show possible rather than give them my thing that I do each time. And for a lot of people, that's important to have that kind of level of control and certainty in what they play. But one of the reasons why I switched over to live after having DJ'd for 20 plus years, almost 30 years, was because I really wanted to be able to produce music live in front of people, producing live on the fly, rather than playing things that I had prepared in advance. Because that was me DJing for years, was playing things that I had prepared in advance, not the set, but songs that were already made. And then I would pick and choose from those songs to make a DJ set live while I was playing. I would pick whatever tracks I wanted to play. And with this, I didn't want there to be anything that was predetermined or anything that was preset. So that's kind of how I do it and why I do the way I do it. So let's look at the chat. I've been neglecting the chat and getting sucked into these machines. So let's see here. Yeah, everybody seems to be loving the Coral. Sorry, Brian, yes, we're gonna get you to get one too. We're all pretty psyched on this thing. It's such a clever instrument and such a well implemented instrument in such a small package. So very excited. Let's see here. Do you sequence from the Octa or Digitact, or just run samples, or just sequence from the Oxi? So I mentioned this a little earlier, but just to go through that again one more time, each thing, so the Digitact samples or sequences itself. So that's my drums I'm sequencing from here. Nothing is being sequenced from the Octatrack. Nothing is being sequenced from the Blackbox. This is just playing longer time stretch samples that are on a long loop. So I could just launch them and just kind of let them go. And then everything that's in the modular is being sequenced from the Oxi One. The Oxi Coral module is being sequenced via MIDI, so that way I can sequence all 8 voices of this separately. And then my other 3 voices, the Beehive, the Knit, and the BIA, are all being sequenced from the Oxi, but via CV and gate going into those, and then everything's being modulated by other stuff here. So yeah, so that's how I have it set up. Yes, Oxi Instruments, see you at Super Booth. Can't wait. Excited to hang out in your booth a little bit and show people around these cool things that you guys have created. Thank you very much for creating some incredibly fun instruments to play. Let's see here. Yeah, totally understand that. I prefer playing without preparation as well, just live it in the moment. Yeah, it was kind of, I was joking with somebody the other day that it's the electronic techno version of a jam band. It's kind of like, you know, if you think back, I don't know if and you guys are all old enough to remember, but when the Grateful Dead were a thing, people used to trade recordings of individual performances because every performance was so different. And they would be like, oh, I was at this show and I got a recording of it. And I always kind of loved that idea for techno, because I love the idea that for me, techno isn't, so I DJ house music as well as techno, and with house music, it's much more about the song, the track that you're playing, and then the next track, and playing the right track at the right moment. And so, kind of feeling that groove and hearing a song that you know and getting that to get you all excited. With techno, for me, it's much more of a music of patience. It's much more the music of the vibe of the whole entire evening. And so I like the idea that it's the soundtrack of the party, it's the soundtrack of the night. And because every night and every party and every club and every environment is different, the soundtrack should be different too, right? It should match the night, it should match the vibe and the people that are there, and the people that are in that moment. They should be able to hear something that fits that moment. And so, yeah, so the idea of like a jam band playing to the crowd that they're in front of, I always like the idea of playing hardware techno in front of for the crowd that I'm in front of, rather than something that I had thought would be the vibe, so I prepared it. And if it's not the vibe, I'm kind of locked into what I prepared. That scares me more than having to improvise stuff, because, there's nothing worse than not having, as a DJ or a live performer, not having the right music to fit the vibe of what you're playing and having to kind of force it into a certain place. Where with this and being improvised, there's a ton of flexibility to be able to kind of make it up live on the fly. So let's see here, what else we got here? All about spontaneous creativity. Yes, 100%. I'm kind of lazy. Me too. I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours preparing something and play that out. I'd rather spend those hours practicing my instrument and getting good enough at it that I don't have to prepare things ahead of time when I go out. What happened to the Percons? Somebody asked me that before. The Percons is such a cool, it's right over there on the shelf. It's not in my live set because it's too big to carry around, but it is a close second for my favorite drum machine ever, behind the Analog Rhythm, and it's not going anywhere. It's over there, and once I'm done playing these couple of big shows that I have come up, I will definitely be getting back into the Percons. It's just too big to take with me as part of a traveling live show. But yeah, it's amazing and crazy fun to play, like just unbelievable. Let's see. Are you recording your live shows? I'm so bad about recording my live shows. Everybody always asks for recordings, and I'm horrible about it. So if you come to a live show and you want to record the video or whatever, I would be ever thankful because I always forget. And in one sense, as far as recording the audio of it, I almost don't want to because, like I said, I want it to be just that moment. And when you listen to it in a different moment, it might not fit, might not be what you're looking for. And I always kind of loved the idea that you had to be there or you missed it. And so if you got to come to the show, or else you can't just get a recording of it somewhere. Now, that said, I have recorded a couple of live shows. If you go to my Instagram, there's a link in the bio that takes you to my SoundCloud and other stuff like that. And on there, I've got a recent show from Patched Out. It's about an hour and 40 minutes or so of live show. So yes, there are a couple recordings, but it's not something I'm doing on a regular basis. Let's see here. Would you ever make house music instead of techno? I actually have made a lot of house music. If you go on Beatport and you can look at some of the other aliases that I've produced under, if you look up Ricard, I produced under that name for quite a while. I had releases on Head Candy and Ministry of Sound and Trax Records from Chicago. I've played and produced house music for 20 plus years, and as well as techno, but techno's kind of my real passion. I love both of them, and I love DJing house music and producing house music, but the vibe at techno shows and just the emotional vibe of the music is something that just kind of sucks me in. So it's where my passion lays, but I absolutely love house music as well. So check some of those out. You might dig it. Let's see here. Percon's too big for the live setup. Yes, it is totally too big for the live setup. That said, the live setup is getting scaled down. One of the reasons is for travel, and I was kind of frightened at the idea of having to check gear to be able to travel. And I've got a couple of international flights coming up pretty quick here, and wanted to find a way that I could take everything carry-on. So what I'm doing now is this modular case fits into one side of a rolling carry-on bag. I put some foam in there, so it's got some padding with it. The other side of that rolling carry-on is clothes and things like that. And then these machines, including the analog heat that's down here underneath, all of those machines with their deck savers fit into my backpack. So I can take that as my personal item, this is my carry-on, and I don't need to check a bag for gear or clothes as long as the trip's relatively short. So yeah, that was a big motivation behind this, and not taking the Percons, not having the analog rhythm, but rather kind of scaling down to like the Digitact and a smaller modular case. So I get a ton of flexibility that I would get out of having much bigger gear. I had a much bigger modular case before, but this way I can take it all carry on, and I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Cool. If you got any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. In the meantime, I am going to start messing around with something a little bit different. So again, as usual, I'm going to go in and just clear my all of my sequencers. I had somebody ask me once if it makes you sad to clear things out, and I don't. I love to not save things. So like I don't save any of my sequences or any of my patterns, because I love the idea I love the idea of being able to make stuff up on the fly. So I love being able to clear out the sequencers and then just do something else. So let's do something random. Let's just go up to one of these lovely Platts clones, and let's put in I kind of like the chord engine. Let's hear what that sounds like. And then we go into the channel on the Oxi that's controlling that. I can go into this random mode and figure out how random I want things to be and just generate a random pattern. Let's hear what this sounds like if we hit play. So that's the sound of this one here. If you don't like it, you can do another one. That one's kind of cool. You guys were asking for house music before. Here you go, some funky house stabs. And then let's go into the BIA and just do something with a bass line. So let's see. Let's drive that through our ghost here. All right. Let's see. Anything else in the chat here? Let's see. Resources for vocal stabs. No, actually, it's really funny you say that because I've been looking for not necessarily just stabs, but some good vocals. Like that one that I played earlier that sounds kind of like, I think it's from India, if I'm not wrong, but like I like those, you know, Eastern or Indian or Arabic or, you know, Asian. I like those kind of vocals just because they tend to be written in some really cool, interesting scales. And when you're doing techno and you want things to be a little bit minor or atonal or things like that, they go really, really well. So I guess they go really well because they don't go really well. So yeah, no, I wish, and if anybody knows of any good spots for getting some vocals like that, definitely let me know, because that's one thing that is really difficult for me to find, and I would love to get a few more that I don't have right now. Let's see. Doming, oh, hey, cool. I didn't know you were on here. How's it going, man? Improv for sure, like the compact digital analog hybrid backpack setup you got going. Yes, it is very versatile. You are correct. Get for your schedule for May, play with us. Yeah, definitely let me know. Always down to go to Miami. Fun place, love playing there. So definitely let me know anytime. I will be happy to come down that way. Respect 100% improv style, but did you ever even keep a phrase or riff? No, I actually don't. Other than, I shouldn't say no, because I do have some that are in the Blackbox, but they're really few and far between. Like you heard, like there was a percussion riff, there was a couple things like that, but really no. I am big on making them, and I would rather know how to make the cool riff that I want to hear quickly on the fly by practicing it a ton than have a bunch of them saved and try to find them and dig through and, you know, find them in the gear. But yeah, no, I don't. Actually, the only thing I do save, and again, this is kind of so I can always have a foundation to go back to, is drums. So like the drum pattern, so like if you go into this one here, let's see. So like this is a kick pattern that has, you know, like a 4 on the floor kick with some little extra notes chucked in there. So it sounds like this. If I was to change to another pattern and have my kick going, that one is kind of similar. If you go over here, so it's all kind of 4 on the floor, but with some other things. And I keep those in there just to not have to always go back in and sequence things, but you know, it's still very easy to sequence on the fly here. Got some like kind of breakbeaty kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so I do keep things like that. So I do keep drums, but interestingly enough, it's funny. So like I'll go through and I'll, you know, make some drum patterns and I'll, you know, change up something that I already had sequenced, and I'll just save it and just save right over the top of what I had before, because I don't ever want to kind of get, I don't know, rest too much on always doing the same stuff. So I would rather record over stuff or save over stuff or sequence over stuff than have things that I always go back to. And I like being able to kind of mix and match and combine things. So that's why I have these things that are all, you know, drum groups and drum kits that I can use with a lot of other stuff. One of the reasons why I love the Percons, and I'll do another video about that coming up at some point, but one of the things I love about it is that you save sequences and kits separately, just like you do in the analog rhythm. So it's cool because if you've got a pattern that you like, but you want to change it up, you can just keep that pattern going and load a new kit, and it'll totally change it up. Or you can save a pattern with a kit, and that way when you load that pattern, it loads it up with the kit that you created it with. So very cool for flexibility. I guess that's where I do save things, but I don't ever really save anything melodic or any of the sequences or any of that stuff, because I'd rather do those kind of live in the moment. Let's see here. Have you still got the heat in the signal chain? Yes. Let's see if I can move stuff around here. Well, you can't really see it. It's underneath here. So I only put it underneath there just so that everything stays a bit tighter. Here, maybe if I switch angles. You can kind of see on this angle, it's under there. Under there, if you can see it. But yeah, so it's, the heat's still there, so everything comes into the Octatrack so that I can, you know, sum everything together like a mixer, and then I can have all these performance effects and do all that stuff. And then the main outs from the Octatrack go into the analog heat, and then that goes out to the front of house. The analog heat, I basically built a preset in there that I like the sound of, and I just set it and forget it. So whenever I'm playing, I will always just put it on that setting at the beginning of the night, and then I just leave it there. And what that setting is the, on the saturation, it's like the second one out of 10, so like a little bit of saturation to kind of fill up everything. Then it has a high pass filter that I put on the whole master, and I bring the cutoff down to about 20, 22, 25 hertz, and then I add some resonance, so that gives me a little resonant boost at about, you know, 35, 40 hertz. So it gives a really super fat subby low end in a nightclub setting. And then to counter that, I go into the EQ, and I add a little bit of boost to the high end. Then I add some drive, and yeah, I think that's it. Anything else in there? Nope, that's it. And then I save that, and that's what everything goes through. So that's what, it's kind of like the best I can do with what I have for kind of mastering at the end of the chain without having 25 different pieces of gear. It doesn't have a compressor, it doesn't have a limiter in it, so I have to be really careful about how I have everything going into it, that there's not anything that's kind of wild, because it will get through and it will spike things. So I have to be really conscious of that. But what it does do is it adds saturation, so it adds a lot of kind of intermediary harmonics between all of the notes, so it really fills out the spectrum, and it helps a live setup sound more like a produced track. Because a lot of the shows that I'll play, there'll be DJs playing the night, and then I'll play live, and you don't want all of a sudden when you come on after DJs to have the sound level drop and everything sound thin and all that stuff. So the heat is really the thing that kind of fills that out and makes it sound much more like a fully produced track coming out, no matter what I play. But it still does take a ton of you know, care to make sure that I don't pump the wrong stuff into the heat, because it doesn't have any way to compress or limit. I was actually looking the other day, there's a new UAD pedal that is a compressor that looks amazing. That basically, like, it's an 1176 and a couple of other emulations in a guitar pedal. And so I was thinking about running from the heat into that to the front of house, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Reminds me of Kraftwerk. Wow, that's that's quite a compliment. I'm a huge fan. Here, let me turn this so you can see the poster on the wall is a Kraftwerk poster. So I'm a big Kraftwerk fan. Let's see here. I started recording my own vocals using the Roland VT3. Feels like kind of, okay, let's go. And there's always room. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with techno, the vocal is more about, well, techno, everything is about the vibe and the atmosphere. Like, I tell people all the time that techno is like 90% sound design and 10% you know, the musical part, the sequencing or the melodies or whatever. And I feel the same about vocals too. Like the vocals in techno are really about the sound design of the vocal and kind of the mood that they add in. So whether that's you know, the vocals I was playing before, where it's just like a voice saying rhythm over again, or whether it's a melodic thing that's kind of in a more exotic scale that makes stuff sound really interesting, but it just provides a vibe more than kind of the literal vocal that you find in you know, house music or, you know, top 40 music or EDM or whatever. A lot of those vocals tend to be very literal, like they're telling a story. Whereas techno, it's kind of adding to the vibe. And that's why I think those vocals are so hard to find, because most of the vocals that you find on, you know, Loop Cloud or Splice or whatever, those are all designed for that type of music. So they're much more, you know, a verse, a chorus, a phrase that makes sense, where I want some random stuff. So yeah, I'm about to start just recording my own random things in, because it's the only way to get the kind of vocal sound that I'm looking for. So let's see here. Looks like that is pretty much it for the chat. Let me know if you've got any other questions. Otherwise, we're going to probably wrap it up. Just to let you guys know, a couple shows coming up. If you're in Europe, I'll be in Berlin for Super Booth. Waiting for some details on exactly where and when things are going to happen there, but I will put those out on socials as soon as I can. So if you like this live stream thing, these aren't going to be regular and scheduled. I'll do them whenever I can, whenever I'm home from and not on a work trip or whatever. So might be 3 or 4 times in a week. It might be once in a month. I just have no idea. So if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get a notification whenever whenever one's going to be coming out. Otherwise, keep tuning in, and hopefully you'll catch it. If you're going to be in any of those areas, would love to see you at the shows. Denver on May 20th with Travarsi, who's on the chat here a little while ago. ALX 106, who, if you watch YouTube, you know him as Alex from WMD. Phenomenal modular synth player. He and Travarsi play together, and the two of them together are absolutely insane. So you have to see that if you can. And then Tunnel is going to be coming from Minneapolis. And of course, the headliner for the show is Lady Starlight. So I'm looking forward to doing direct support and kind of warming up the room for Lady Starlight. I'm a huge fan of hers. So excited for that on all hardware live techno evening. So if you're going to be in the Denver area, May 20th, definitely come check that one out for sure. And Berlin, and then not sure what else, but check socials. There'll be stuff on there. And again, if you like this kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing these every once in a while. And if you have anything you'd like me to talk about in one of these and you didn't have a chance to write it in the chat or whatever, write it in the comments on the video, because the video does post to YouTube after this. Or write things in the comments, or feel free to reach out to me with a direct message on Instagram or through the YouTube channel or whatever. And I'll be happy to answer whatever questions I can. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer, and hopefully I can point you in the right direction, because I know a lot of people who know a lot of stuff. So if I don't know it, hopefully I can point you to somebody who does. So anyway, well, thanks very much for tuning in, and I'm gonna rock out a little bit to get out of here, and hope you guys all have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.